good morning, or afternoon. If you're watching this in the afternoon, good afternoon. How about that? Or if it's evening, well, you can fill in the blanks. Nice to see you today. We are finishing Act 5. We're finishing the play, actually. So we've already had one of our protagonists take the poison. He has died, Romeo. He said, true apothecary thought drugs are quick, and thus with a kiss, I die. So we pick up in the middle of Act 5, Scene 3, and in a separate part of the stage to indicate that it's outside of the tomb, enter Friar Lawrence with a lantern, crowbar, and a spade. Something to get that tomb open. So he doesn't know Romeo has already done that. So he has arrived. Okay, so definitely notice the urgency, the fear in Friar Lawrence's words as he's dealing with the unraveling of his plan, really the wreckage of his plan as he sees what he has wrought, what he has brought about. All right, so we'll pick up wrought her. We'll just minimize. All right, Friar Lawrence, lantern, crow, and spade. Says, St. Francis be my speed. How oft tonight have my old feet stumbled at graves. Who's there? Balthazar enters. Here's one, a friend, and one that knows you well. Friar Lawrence, bliss be upon you. Tell me, good my friend, what torch is yon that vainly lends his light to grubs and eyeless skulls? As I discern, it burneth in the capel's monument. So he basically sees the light coming from the tomb, and it's like, what is that yonder torch that is lighting up grubs, little worms, and eyeless skulls? He's like, well, something's burning in the capel's monument. Balthazar, it doth so, holy sir, and there's my master, one that you love. Who is it? Romeo. Friar Lawrence hears that, and you can just imagine the pit in his stomach when he hears Romeo's already in there. Like, how long hath he been there? Balthazar, full half an hour. Go with me to the vault. Balthazar, I dare not, sir. My master knows not, but I'm gone hence, and fearfully did menace me with death if I did stay to look on his intents. Interesting that a servant's rhyming there. Interesting. But he said that my master said I have to go away or else my own death, right? If I stay and see what he's doing. Friar Lawrence says, stay then, I'll go alone. Fear comes upon me. Oh, much I fear some ill, unthrifty thing. So basically saying he's got a bad feeling about this. Something awful may have happened here. And then Balthazar delivers some information to Friar Lawrence that he frames as it could be a dream. He says, as I did sleep under this yew tree here, I dreamt my master and another fought, and that my master slew him. Friar Lawrence approaches the tomb, away from Balthazar because of this news. He looks around. He says, Romeo, alack, alack, what blood is this which stains the stony entrance of the sepulchre? What mean these masterless and gory swords to lie discolored by this place of peace? He looks inside the tomb. So outside the tomb, remember there was a sword fight already between Paris and Romeo, and he's like, why is there blood on the steps of the sepulchre, which is the tomb in which Juliet is? And he says, they've discolored this place of peace. He looks inside the tomb, and he sees Romeo. Okay, let's read it. Romeo, oh pale, who else? What, Paris too, and steeped in blood? Ah, what an unkind hour is guilty of this lamentable chance. The lady stirs. Suddenly we see Juliet waking. Juliet sees Friar. She says, oh, comfortable Friar, where is my lord? I do remember well where I should be, and here I am. Where is my Romeo? It's a noise that sounds from outside the tomb. Friar Lawrence, I hear some noise. Lady, come from that nest of death, contagion, and unnatural sleep. Oh, greater power than we can contradict hath thwarted our intents. Come away. So he's letting her know that the plan has gone awry. He says, wake up from your nest of unnatural sleep. And he says, a greater power than we can contradict hath thwarted our intents. All right, so this speaks to that idea that this is predestined. This is the stars crossed against them. This is destiny. This is God. This is some greater power than we can contradict, some greater power than we can oppose, hath thwarted our intents, has ruined our plan. Okay? So he's warning, he's trying to get her out of there. He says, come away. He says, thy husband in thy bosom there lies dead, and Paris too. He says, come, I'll dispose of thee among a sisterhood of holy nuns. Stay not to question, for the watch is coming. So there's some urgency. Friar Lawrence wants to get her out of there before they find the bodies of Paris and Romeo. He says, the watch is coming. He says, your husband is there dead, so is Paris. He says, come, go get Juliet. I dare no longer stay. So Friar Lawrence is imploring Juliet to leave with him. He says he's going to take her to a nunnery. He's going to deposit her in a nunnery. So Friar Lawrence, think about what's going through his head. His plan has unraveled, and the two only children of the most powerful families in town, one of them's dead and the other is believed to be dead, and you find out that it's because of his meddling. So Friar Lawrence is trying to cover his butt right here, and is trying to take Juliet and just deposit her in a nunnery, basically make her disappear. So think about the intentions of Friar Lawrence. They were good in the beginning, but now he's very concerned that everything has unraveled. His plan is in ruins. It is a wreck. Okay? So Juliet tells him, she says, go, get thee hence, for I will not away. So she says, I'm not going anywhere, get out of here. And Friar Lawrence is just frustrated. He's trying to get out of there before the police, not the police, but the citizens' watch arrives. And so Friar Lawrence exits. When Juliet looks at her lover next to her on the bed, her husband, and she says, what's here? A cup closed in my true love's hand? And she looks at the empty vial of poison. She says, poison, I see, hath been his timeless end. O churl, drunk all and left no friendly drop to help me after? So she tried to get a little bit as well. There was nothing in there. She says, you drank it all, didn't leave any for me? She said, I will kiss thy lips, haply some poison yet doth hang on them, to make me die with a restorative. And she kisses Romeo, trying to get some of that poison, trying to follow him into the afterlife. She kisses him, and to me, this is one of the most tragic lines in the play. She says, thy lips are warm. They missed each other that much. Thy lips are yet warm, she says when she kisses him. Okay? So she realizes that he has just died, that she missed him by seconds, by minutes, right? Suddenly the watchmen enter along with Paris's page. The chief watchman says to the page, lead, boy, which way? Okay? So they enter, by enter we mean they enter the stage. They're not actually in the tomb. So Juliet hears them from inside the tomb on the stage. She says, yea, noise, then I'll be brief. And she sees something on Romeo, and she pulls it out. She says, oh, happy dagger, this is thy sheath. There rust, and let me die. And she shoves it into herself, stabs herself with Romeo's dagger, and dies. Sheath, of course, is what you put the dagger into, and she says, this is thy sheath, her heart. And she stabs herself. She says, there rust, and let me die. She dies on top of Romeo's body. So we have this final tableau of Romeo and Juliet together in death, together on this bed, on the bier, the funeral bier. Juliet is dead, as is Romeo. Paris's page says, this is the place, there where the torch doth burn. The chief watchman says, the ground is bloody, search about the churchyard. Go, some of you, whoe'er you find, attach. Some of the watchmen exit, and the chief watchman is looking around. He says, pitiful sight. Here lies the county slain, and Juliet bleeding, warm and newly dead, who here hath lain these 2 days buried. So very confused is the chief watchman here, right? We buried her 2 days ago, and yet now she's freshly dead. What's going on? The county, again, we're talking about Paris. They call him the county, the count. Who here hath lain these 2 days buried. Says, go, tell the prince, run to the Capulet, raise up the Montagues, some others search. And more of the watchmen exit. They're searching the area, trying to find out what happened, and trying to find out who might know what has transpired. The chief watchman continues, we see the ground whereon these woes do lie, but the true ground of all these piteous woes we cannot without circumstance descry. So he says, we see the ground, the literal ground that they're on, but the ground as far as the reason behind all these woes, the reason behind all this misery, he says, we cannot without circumstance describe. We cannot describe means to like see something, almost like you're looking into a crystal ball kind of thing. And he says, we need to know more the circumstances to figure out what exactly happened here, to discover the whole story. Suddenly one of his watchmen enters with Romeo's man Balthazar. The second watchman says, here's Romeo's man. We found him in the churchyard. Chief watchman, hold him in safety till the prince come hither. And then there's a third watchman that comes and has found Friar Lawrence. Says, here is a friar that trembles, sighs, and weeps. We took this mattock and this spade from him as he was coming from this churchyard side. Okay, so the mattock and the spade are the crowbar and the pickaxe that he was using to try to get into the tomb. So he's been caught a bit red-handed. He's trembling, sighing, and weeping. Chief watchman says, a great suspicion. Stay the friar too. So he's got suspicion about the friar and what happened here. Suddenly the prince arrives with his attendants. Prince Aeschylus says, what misadventure is so early up that calls our person from our morning rest? Suddenly enter Capulet and Lady Capulet. What should it be that is so shrieked abroad? Lord Capulet says, what is all this noise? What are they crying out so loud? Lady Capulet, oh, the people in the street cry Romeo, some Juliet, and some Paris, and all run with open outcry toward our monuments. Prince asks, what fear is this which startles in our ears? Basically, what is this that everyone's crying about? What is this that my ears are startled to hear? The chief watchman tells him, he says, sovereign, here lies the County Paris slain, and Romeo dead, and Juliet dead before, warm and new killed. The prince, search, seek, and know how this foul murder comes. Chief watchman, here is a friar, and slaughtered Romeo's man, with instruments upon them fit to open these dead men's tombs. Right? Capulet, O heavens, O wife, look how our daughter bleeds. This dagger hath misstained, for lo, his house is empty on the back of Montague, and it missheathed in my daughter's bosom. Okay, so he says the knife that should be in its sheath of Montague's back is instead missheathed in my daughter's breast, in my daughter's bosom. Lady Capulet, oh me, this sight of death is as a bell that warns my old age to a sepulchre. Okay. So when someone dies, they ring bells in the olden times. And so she says, this sight of death is like my own funeral's bell ringing. She says, it warns my old age. It rushes me, that shows me that I'm going to die soon in the sepulchre. Suddenly enter Montague. Prince, come, Montague, for thou art early up to see thy son and heir now early down. Prince pointing out that it's very early for him to rise to see his son has died early. Montague, alas, my liege, my wife is dead tonight. Grief of my son's exile hath stopped her breath. What further woe conspires against mine age? All right, we have some news. Lady Montague has died off stage, we find out here. Which is interesting. Lady Montague, thinking about the way that women are treated in this play, and in most of Shakespeare's plays, and in the Elizabethan time in general, except for the Queen, women were not treated very well at all. And in this play, Lady Capulet has a few more lines, but Lady Montague really has, I think, 5 or 6 lines in Act 1, and that's it. Right? She tells Benvolio, check on my son. We don't see her react to Romeo's exile, but we find out that exile hath stopped her breath, according to Lord Montague, that she has died from grief of being separated from Romeo. Interesting Shakespeare's treatment of that character, that she just kind of dies as an afterthought off stage. So then Montague says, what further woe conspires against mine age? He says, my wife has just died. What else are you telling me? My son as well? This further woe? The prince says, look, and thou shalt see. Montague sees his son's body in Juliet. He says, oh, thou untaught, what manners is in this? To press before thy father to a grave. Weird way to put it, but where are your manners? Rushing to the grave before your own father, he says. He calls him an untaught boy, like an unschooled child. the prince gives a command. He says, seal up the mouth of outrage for a while. Basically, keep your thoughts to yourself. He says, seal up the mouth of outrage for a while till we can clear these ambiguities and know their spring, their head, their true descent. And then I will be general of your woes and lead you even to death. Okay? So the prince wants to know what really happened here. He wants to clear up these ambiguities. He wants to know their spring, which means their, where'd that go? What started them? What started all of these woes? Their head, basically the cause, the leader of it, their true descent, how it all happened. And then he says, I will be general of your woes. I will be the judge here. General means chief judge. My footnote says chief judge of your woes and possibly lead you even to death, that there may be even a death penalty. Thinking about the fact that Paris is the prince's kinsman again. So he's lost Mercutio and now he's lost Paris as well. And so he wants to know what really happened here. And he says, meantime, forbear. Forbear means to hold yourself back. So he says, meantime, forbear, and let mischance be slave to patience. Bring forth the parties of suspicion. So he's like, before we rush to judgment, let's figure out what's going on. Bring forth the parties of suspicion. The most suspicious figure in this is Friar Lawrence. And Friar Lawrence acknowledges that he is the greatest, the most suspicious here. He says, I am the greatest, able to do least, yet most suspected, as the time and place doth make against me of this direful murder. Okay. So he recognizes that he's under suspicion because he was here at the time of the murder, this direful murder. That means dreadful murder. And here he says, and here I stand, both to impeach and purge. That means to accuse and find innocent, myself condemned and myself excused. Prince is like, okay, well, let us know. He says, then say at once what thou dost know in this. Friar Lawrence says, I will be brief, for my short date of breath is not so long as is a tedious tale. So what he means by my short date of breath, he's talking about his the short time I have left in life. He says, I'm going to be brief because I don't have much time in life, and this is a tedious tale. I gave you every detail. So he's going to try to just hit the high points. He says, Romeo, there dead, was husband to that Juliet, and she, there dead, that Romeo's faithful wife. I married them, and their stolen marriage day was Tybalt's doomsday, whose untimely death banished the new-made bridegroom from the city. All right, so this is the first time that any of these people are hearing about this. Both Lord Capulet, Lord Montague, Lady Capulet, the prince, none of them knew any of this. And so Friar Lawrence is finally telling everyone what happened and what he had a part in. He says that the day that they got married was also Tybalt's doomsday, the day of his death. And he says that untimely death banished the new bridegroom from the city, which is Romeo is the bridegroom. He says, for whom, and not for Tybalt, Juliet pined. Right? Pining means to like cry and mourn. So he says she was mourning for Romeo, not for Tybalt. He says, you, pointing to Lord Capulet, to remove that siege of grief from her, betrothed and would have married her perforce to County Paris. Then comes she to me, and with wild looks bid me devise some mean to rid her from this second marriage, or in my cell there would she kill herself. Then again gave I her, so tutored by my art, a sleeping potion, which so took effect as I intended, for it wrought on her the form of death. Right, so he is letting them know everything that happened, right? Juliet was going to be forced into this second marriage by Lord Capulet, who was trying to keep her from crying so much. And so she threatened to kill herself right there in his cell, which, as we know, this is all true, right? Friar Lawrence isn't making any of this up. This is all how it went down. So he says he gave her this sleeping potion that, as I intended, it wrought on her the form of death. It made her seem as if she were dead. Friar Lawrence continues, meantime, I writ to Romeo that he should hither come as this dire night to help to take her from her borrowed grave, being the time the potion's force should cease. But he which bore my letter, Friar John, was stayed by accident, and yesternight returned my letter back. So he's telling him about the whole letter Friar John was supposed to deliver to Romeo to let him know to be there that night when she awakens. And he says, then all alone at the prefixed hour of her waking came I to take her from her kindred's vault, meaning to keep her closely at my cell till I conveniently could send to Romeo.
But when I came, some minute ere the time of her awakening, here untimely lay the noble Paris and true Romeo dead. She wakes, and I entreated her come forth, and bear this work of heaven with patience. But then a noise did scare me from the tomb, and she, too desperate, would not go with me, but, as it seems, did violence on herself. All this I know, and to the marriage her nurse is privy, and if aught in this miscarried by my fault, let my old life be sacrificed some hour before his time unto the rigor of severest law. So Friar Lawrence finishes telling the story. He talks about not the misadventure, but the misfire with the letter that never got to Romeo. And so by the time Friar Lawrence came to get Juliet out of the tomb, Paris and Romeo were already dead. He was scared from the tomb, and then Juliet did violence on herself. She killed herself. He tells them that the nurse knows about it. She's privy to it. That's what that means. If someone is privy to something, they have knowledge of it. So he says the nurse is privy to the marriage. And he says, if anything, if any part of this tragedy is my fault, he basically says, let my old life be sacrificed and let me suffer the most severe punishment. So he puts himself, throws himself on the mercy of the prince, on the mercy of the law. The prince says, we still have known thee for a holy man. Where's Romeo's man? What can he say in this? All right. So the prince knows that he's a priest. He doesn't think that he's lying, but he wants to hear from Balthazar to see what he can confirm. Balthazar says, I brought my master news of Juliet's death, and then in post he came from Mantua to this same place, to this same monument. He shows a letter. This letter he early bid me give his father, and threatened me with death, going in the vault, if I departed not and left him there. Right, so we have this final letter from Romeo that Balthazar was given early on. The prince says, give me the letter, I will look on it. He takes the letter from Balthazar. Says, where is the county's page that raised the watch? Sirrah, what made your master in this place? Speaking to the page of Paris. He says, he came with flowers to strew his lady's grave, and bid me stand aloof, and so I did. Anon comes one with light to ope the tomb, and by my master drew on him, and then I ran away to call the watch. Prince hears that testimony. Obviously everyone here is telling the truth about what happened. Prince skims the letter. He says, this letter doth make good the friar's words, their course of love, the tidings of her death. And here he writes that he did buy a poison of a poor apothecary, and therewithal came to this vault to die and lie with Juliet. Where be these enemies? Capulet, Montague. See what a scourge is laid upon your hate, that heaven finds means to kill your joys with love. And I, for winking at your discords too, have lost a brace of kinsmen. All are punished. So the prince points out all of the scourge. A scourge is like a plague. And remember, Mercutio kind of foretold that. He said a plague on both your houses back in Act 3 when he was dying. But he says, see what a scourge is laid upon your hate. Your hate has brought about this pestilence, this scourge on our city. He says that heaven finds means to kill your joys with love. The joys are their children, right? Heaven has found a way to kill your children with love. And he says, and I, for winking at your discords, for kind of not punishing everyone for their fighting constantly, I just kind of wink at it and have allowed it. He says, I have lost a brace of kinsmen. Remember his kinsmen that he has lost? He's lost Mercutio. He's lost Paris. He says, all are punished. Montagues are punished. Capulets are punished. He himself is punished for putting up with it all this time. All are punished. Lord Capulet turns to Lord Montague, says, O brother Montague, give me thy hand. This is my daughter's jointure, for no more can I demand. Jointure is the dowry of the daughter. He says, no more can I demand. But what is the daughter's jointure? Montague says, but I can give thee more, for I will raise her statue in pure gold, that whiles Verona by that name is known, there shall no figure at such rate be set as that of true and faithful Juliet. Capulet says, as rich shall Romeo's by his ladies lie, poor sacrifices of our enmity. Okay? So Lord Montague is going to put up a statue of pure gold of Juliet. Lord Capulet is going to complement it with a statue of Romeo that will be just as rich as Juliet's. And he says they were poor sacrifices of our rivalry. They were the poor results. They were sacrificed because of our hatred. And so they seem to be putting their differences to bed, finally. Actually, they are putting their differences to bed at long last. So remember the prologue told us this was going to happen, right? It says that it was up to them, not but their children's end could remove. Well, now their children's ends have come, and so the hatred that they've had for all this time is finally removed, and they will both erect statues of each other's child to be together eternally in Verona. As long as Verona is called Verona, he says. The prince has the final monologue here, and he ties everything up. He says, "A glooming peace this morning with it brings. The sun for sorrow will not show his head. Go hence, to have more talk of these sad things. Some shall be pardoned, and some punished, for never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo." So a very powerful monologue that he finishes with. He says, a glooming peace, right? It's a peace that's been overshadowed by dark, gloomy clouds. A glooming peace this morning with it brings, he says, the sun won't even show its head. He says, some will be pardoned, some punished. And never was there a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo. And this is where the play ends. Right? Everyone's there. How many people have died by the end of the play? How many people have died? We got Mercutio, who's the first to die. Then Tybalt. Then who was after that? Paris. Romeo. Juliet. Lady Montague. Am I missing anybody? 6 dead by the end of the play? So Act 5 serves as the catastrophe. Okay? In a tragedy, we don't have a resolution. Things are not resolved. Well, they are to some extent. The feud is ended. But instead of the resolution, we have a catastrophe in the tragedy. It's when the tragedy completely unfolds. And that's what happens in Act 5. Remember, the climax of a tragedy is called the crisis. And that happens in Act 3. And that was the point after which everything went downhill, leading to the ultimate catastrophe. And so here we see the catastrophe, and there are bodies everywhere. Some are pardoned and some punished. Okay? But in the end, there was a glooming peace. So there was triumph in their death, triumph in that the feud is ended, triumph in that they are together in the afterlife, they are together in death, they are together immortally as golden statues, and they are together forever because we've been reading this play for 500 years. So here we are. Never a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo.